We are now approaching the boss of the shield maze, Hosilla. As an Inquisitor, she has Solo Tactics, a class ability that allows her to gain the full effect of teamwork feats even if her allies lack them. And she has some very good teamwork feats at her disposal, Outflank and Precise Strike. There's one problem for her. She and her allies still need to adhere to the positioning requirements. And unfortunately for her, she begins the battle alone. And when the reinforcements do arrive, they spawn on the opposite side of the battlefield. Nevertheless, once buffed, Hosilla remains a strong opponent, second only to the Lars Water Elemental. Her glaive, Marching Terror, carries an area of effect fear ability that triggers on hit, which can be very annoying should it take effect. That said, our leopard can ably tank her, provided it doesn't get caught flat-footed. Unlikely, as she spends her first turn buffing. While she may shift targets later into the fight, we should have ample time to take her down before that happens. Hosilla's armor class is quite high, but she has no resistances nor immunities, so her sneak attacks should dispatch her with relative ease. Worst case scenario, we can always guide her, as her movement speed is relatively slow. During the second phase of the fight, 2 Quasits spawn at the rear, ambushing our more vulnerable backline. We can prepare for this by repositioning our more fragile allies in advance. Though Wenduag will inevitably find herself in a precarious spot courtesy of the mid-fight cutscene that forcibly places her there. That aside, the Quasits themselves are rather weak and shouldn't present much of a challenge. Their claw attacks can inflict poison, so it might be a good idea to cast Delay Poison on Wenduag. As part of the damage overview, I have decided to include a probability distribution for damage on a hit, as just looking at the full range can be somewhat misleading. The more dice you roll, the less likely the extremes become. This is due to the larger number of possible combinations that result in mid-range sums. In this particular case, the full range is quite broad, spanning from 18 to 75. And this might suggest significant variance. However, the likely range, as you can see, is in fact much narrower. I've also included an average rounds to kill value, as the average damage value can be somewhat deceptive, particularly when dealing with high damage but low HP and hit chance. Before the fight, we ensure that both the leopard and Wenduag are stripped of any unnecessary items, as choosing Nan will lose them once the battle is over. For the leopard, I apply just enough buffs to bring its AC to 38 in combat, as Hosilla's attack bonus when fully buffed is 18. As for Wenduag, I've decided to leave her in chainmail. It's not worth much in terms of gold, and she might get attacked by the Quasit. I've also decided not to buff her with Delay Poison. Frankly, I'm not overly concerned if she gets poisoned, as long as it doesn't prove fatal during the fight itself. We opt for the Angel choice here, as it grants us a very useful buff for the Tower of Estroth in Act 1.
Save the last one for me.
I moved the leopard slightly to Hosilla's left, allowing it to better intercept the Quasit that will appear later on that side. Meanwhile, the rest of the party, save for Wenduag, is directed towards the safer right flank. I forgot to enable autocast on Chant for Camellia, leading to some bafflement on my part when Caesar stood idle. Here I combine Guidance, a standard action, with her move action, Chant. Admittedly, it's not much, but it will contribute more to the fight than an unbuffed light crossbow. Both Wenduag and Lan have their positions reset during the mid-fight cutscene. Since I hadn't moved Wenduag from the original spot, the shift is barely noticeable in this footage. Luckily, we won initiative and managed to eliminate the Quasit before it could strike either Lan or Wenduag. That said, with the Quasit's relatively high initiative, thanks to their dexterity score, you can usually expect Lan or Wenduag to take a hit when doing this encounter.
They didn't have a choice. They were forced. Shut up!
I
led by example. I trained. I tried to become.
I went through the same ritual as. Who do you want at your? We. Better.
I thought I'm going to the surface only because. But then.
So I don't regret what I went through the.
In the post-fight dialogue, we choose to take Lan with us. Wenduag has fulfilled her purpose as our shield mace specialist, and now it's time to part ways with her. It's worth noting that this is the last area where one can rest in an unsafe place without accruing corruption. Once we leave, the luxury of resting before every encounter will become a thing of the past. The next section of the prologue might as well be one extended cutscene, with Irabeth and her soldiers handling most of the combat. So I'll meet you next at the tavern.